Every year, Merrillville High School presents its annual spring musical. These musicals are known for their incredible sets, wonderful lighting and sound, and of course the amazing student talent.
Love it till the day I die, the music of my soul.
2020 was no different. The cast of Little Shop of Horrors had been preparing for 8 weeks to get their show ready. Like every year, they had a lot of distractions, like the Indiana State Solo and Ensemble Contest.
All day long, all day long, all day long.
Contest that brought home 99% of the events with gold medals. The show itself, like all musicals, had its own set of technical issues. Well, like building 4 movable plants with sizes ranging from 12 inches to 10 feet in height, a flower shop that had to open and close, and plants that fall from the balcony. And like every year, their dress rehearsals were long, full of corrections, the first time they ever perform with an orchestra, and the sets and lights and special effects are still being finished. Even our themed concession stand was being prepared to open and sell their menu of themed treats. So it was like any other year. That is until the last dress rehearsal. That is when the cast found out that the school would be closed because of Covid-19, and no one was going to be allowed in the building. The spring musical at best would be pushed off for a month, at worst not performed at all.
To realize just how amazing this journey was, you have to understand what it takes to put on a musical in normal conditions. It takes 8 to 10 weeks of really hard work. There are rehearsals every day after school for 8 weeks. Those rehearsals include musical rehearsals, and then blocking and dialogue rehearsals, and then choreography. These rehearsals can last anywhere from 3 to 5 hours a night, and then after they get home at 7:30 or 8 o'clock, they have to do their homework. Then they go to bed, and they start this whole process over again. It's a grueling schedule for 8 weeks. In addition, sets, sound, costumes, and lighting have to be designed. Once the designs are finished, they have to be implemented, which is no easy task. Sets and costumes can take hundreds of hours of building. Set construction takes place before and after rehearsals, and every weekend, many times 12 to 16 hours on Saturdays and Sundays. And the entire cast takes part in that. And we haven't even talked about putting together and rehearsing the orchestra, which is rehearsed on evenings after regular cast rehearsals. If you work in a professional theater with a professional production, there is someone who directs the actors. There's someone else who's the director of the orchestra, another person who is a musical director, another vocal coach. There's a technical director, a costume designer, a set designer, a choreographer, someone in charge of sound, someone in charge of lights, and on and on and on, and you get the idea. But that is not the case in a high school or community theater production. Here, several people wear many hats. Melinda Reinhardt is called the director of the Merrillville High School Spring Musical Productions, but she's also the vocal director.
My name is Melinda Reinhardt. I'm the choir director and performing arts department head at Merrillville High School, and I'm also the director of the Spring Musical. As director of the Spring Musical, I'm in charge of all aspects of the show and making sure that we get the entire show put together. And I'm also the scenic artist We have some other people that help from time to time, but most of the time, a lot of the artwork on sets is falling in my lap. Also, I have been running rehearsals for the pit for the last 3 years, so that's also something that kind of, I used to have somebody else that did that, but unfortunately they couldn't come out and play with us anymore. So the running of the rehearsals with the adults and the students that are playing in the orchestra pit for the show, those rehearsals take place outside of my daily rehearsals with the cast and chorus for the production. In the past, I've had some people that have been able to help us with costumes, but unfortunately, they're no longer with us. And so costumes for the last couple years have also fallen in my lap in terms of making purchases and fittings and arranging for cleanings and stuff like that is so much more than anybody really realizes. When you come and see a production, you see the kids on stage and you don't realize the number of man hours it takes to do some of the tasks that the kids do to learn the material, and the adults behind the scenes to help the kids learn the material, to build a set, to put them in the right costumes, hair, makeup, orchestra pit, making sure our concession people have what they need to be able to make the experience a good one for our theater goers. It's nonstop for 8 weeks. You are married to the show, so you need to make sure that you have chosen a show that you can live with for 8 weeks and eat, sleep, and breathe that production.
Tom Dobes is our technical director, who also designs the sound and is the soundboard operator. And being the soundboard operator means you have to run up to 24 cordless mics and 16 mics in the orchestra pit. His job is also to repair any broken mics, which happens every night. He also replaces them a lot of times out of his own pocket. He helps hang lights. He helps repair lights. He also helps repair anything electrical on stage. He is also the one that makes sure the software for the lighting board and the projections is operating. He also makes sure the network that connects all these elements is also working. Will Akins was the vocal coach, but he also helped build and design the Audrey 2 plants. He built sets, he painted sets, and he played one of the keyboards in the orchestra. He was also a rehearsal accompanist.
My very first show here in the high school was Scrooge the Musical with Ross Music Theater.
I like life here and now, life and I made a mutual vow. Till I die, life and I will try to be better somehow. And if life...
And just watching that process take place, I was always told it was a, smaller version of what would happen. And so when we did my first musical here, that was Phantom of the Opera, I thought that, okay, this is just a big show. That's why it took so long to do all the lights and the sets. I mean, you have rehearsals that go on after school every single day, and then, you have your chorus rehearsals, and then you have your principal rehearsals, and then you have to come out on stage and block it while someone else is in the choir room singing. And it was a lot, but as time progressed, I realized that was the amount of work that went into every single production. 8 weeks or so of rehearsing before school, coming in on Saturdays and Sundays, doing set pieces, trying to paint. And at that time, I didn't really know much about painting and those kinds of things. And now, to be about almost 10 years later, I can understand why it takes so much time to put all of these things on in regular time. The attention to detail, the knowing that, like they said, in other forms, in other places, you have multiple people doing this. Well, you have a couple of people here that are taking the load and bearing the load of everything. So to put on a musical during regular time is a big undertaking.
My husband, Mike, is our assistant director. He also helps a lot with all the technical aspects of the show, so thank goodness for him. I don't have to worry about that. He also does the set design.
that's right.
So as you can see, the amount of work that goes into a show is daunting, and many people have vested 8 weeks of their life into it. But the payoff is always opening night, the night an audience gets to enjoy all of your hard work. Once you hear the applause, everyone seems to forget the time and effort it took to produce the show and understand how worth it was. The Little Shop cast was getting ready for their last dress rehearsal on March 12th, so they could open on Friday the 13th. Of all dates. It was at that rehearsal they found out the bad news.
On the 12th, the night of our last dress rehearsal, we found out, unfortunately, that the school was going to be closing for 2 weeks, they said. So in between school getting out and our dress rehearsal starting the call at 6 for costumes and makeup, it was very difficult to decide what was the best way to handle the situation. Should we go ahead and do our last dress rehearsal for some closure, try to maybe run the show with the full pit, or just pause and wait and see what shakes down in 2 weeks and when we regroup?
My soul was crushed when I found out that we might not have a show, especially that hearing it was the day before opening night and it was our tech week. So I was just completely crushed, and I don't know what I felt inside. It was anger, it was like sadness, but it was just, I couldn't let it out. It was just like tears coming down my face, but no emotion.
For me, when they closed the school and postponed our production, I was completely devastated. I spent 8 weeks of my life committed to this show, putting everything that I had into it, and then all of a sudden it just gets ripped from you. So it was very devastating to hear that something I put so much work and everyone else has put so much work into is going to be postponed until later. We didn't know when. It was just until something else happened, then we can start production again.
Yes, the front of Life magazine. Now that's an honor we so seldom grant.
Got me thinking back, because this is literally like the year anniversary, like oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, it was really stressful, because like I'm over here in the dressing room, you know, getting ready, like saying like this is my last dress rehearsal, tomorrow's the big day, I don't even know how I'm gonna sound. And then I got that remind, because you know, that's me and Troop sent it out first, and I was like, play canceled, plays postponed. It was really stressful. I was like, dang, not us using 8 weeks, making sure that we got it and staying late after school, and then it's postponed. Not us putting all that hard work and effort for it to be moved. It was really stressful. And then we didn't know when we were coming back. Like, it was crazy, because we really thought we were just gonna, you know, wait a cool 4 weeks. Then they said school canceled.
Man, I was in the choir room playing around, and someone walks into the room and they're like, guys, no show. And I wouldn't believe it. I refused to believe it. And I found out we had a cast meeting on stage, and everything was just downhill from there. It was like, I don't know, devastating. It was devastating. Having all of that time and energy just kind of go to waste. You don't get that performance. So
I'm really devastated, because it was me putting a lot of work, and we're a few days away, or like 2 days away, and it was actually spoiled for me. Like before we all had our cast meeting, I got a text that said that the show was canceled. So it was like, oh, we had the cast meeting, I already knew it was coming up, and it was just very sad.
And a dryer and an ironing machine in the tract house that we share somewhere that's green. He rakes and trims the grass. He loves to mow.
When they canceled the show, I was really, really upset. I was really sad. When it first hit, I was actually out getting food, and so I was actually kind of not feeling it. Everyone around me was like crying and stuff, and I was like, we're gonna be fine. And then we got to the theater, and I just like, and I just cried because I was looking around at like all of the hard work that we had put into the show, like looking into the pit and everything was set up, and looking on the stage and all of the set, like the whole set was there and all the props were in place and we were getting ready to do the full show run, and I was just looking around at all of that like, wow. And then like looking out into the auditorium, like I'm not even going to be able to perform, and it's, you know, and this is something that we had looked forward to for like 2 or 3 months at that point. So it was really upsetting.
From the production that was supposed to be in March 2020, throughout the summer, rehearsing with the students on Zoom, trying to keep their spirits up.
They lost their mind when they did that. I'm not gonna lie to you, when they said do it over Zoom, I looked at them and I said, hello?
Zoom is a mess for rehearsing, right? I feel like a lot of people know, especially now, that there's a lag when you're on FaceTime, Zoom, anything that, you know, that's like, you know, you're doing a call over the internet. There's a lag, and it's hard to sing and like rehearse in real time when there's a lag, especially when you're singing in harmony. I mean, it's good to go over parts because there was a period of time between like April and May, beginning of June sorta, that I wasn't really doing a lot of singing, or at least a lot of good singing, I should say. And so I definitely needed that one-on-one time with people like Will and Miss Reinhardt to go over my stuff so that I could like actually sing like a normal human being. And because for a minute I thought I couldn't sing because I just wasn't singing for all those months. But it is good for that. But as far as like rehearsing with a cast and the harmonies and when you're doing a duet, it's hard. It's the worst.
I think honestly the biggest challenge of having the Zoom rehearsals was that we're rehearsing the music that we already learned and it's over Zoom, so we can't even meet in person. How are we going to have a show? And that was the big thing. Like there was no hope, like there was no faith for us to have a real show if we're rehearsing over like Zoom. So it was a bad time. It was honestly bad.
Bad Wi-Fi. So like I remember we were rehearsing my song and I'm singing along. We had like this app they were using so like we can hear the music and also like hear each other. And so I'm singing along, and then Mr. Reinhardt is like, Jaliyah, whenever you want to come in. And I'm like, oh, I was singing. Like, and so yeah.
I'm in my bedroom at home with my keyboard set up, and I'm playing, and there's this lag with the students who are singing. And so I'm trying to compensate for the lag, and then I had to re-teach myself how to accompany.
I think we use like 5 different programs, and like everybody's using something different, and like, you know, you're going to be on this app, but they're going to be on that app, and then we're also going to be on Zoom because you want to be able to see, but also make sure you have another device and headphones, and like also have like a spare laptop just in case we have to use another application. Also download Adobe because we need that as well. Upload some files to Dropbox because we don't know what we're going to do with that. Also, record yourself in your room singing just in case. Just in case. Also, wash your hands and wear a mask. It's a lot.
On the 13th day of March, in the early year of a decade not too long before our very own, the human race suddenly encountered a terrifying threat to its very existence. And though this enemy surfaced, it can be defeated by doing one simple thing.
The fall hit maybe that we'd be able to. We knew football started practicing in August, and when they did start practicing, we did make arrangements for us to go ahead and begin to meet again to try to put the show back together again.
And I'm over here emailing the principal like, what's up? Finally get a response. I'm like, okay, because the athletic teams was already practicing, and we like, where is us? So yeah, that was kind of hard part because like we trying to get rehearsals in, so when we are able to do the play, we could do it, and it's gonna actually be good.
Oh, I was very nervous coming back into the auditorium. It was just like, you don't know what's gonna happen, especially now that there's a pandemic that not a lot of people really know much about. So coming back and trying to put on a show, we don't know a lot of things, like if you're going to be able to do it at all, if anybody's going to show up. So it's just nerves everywhere.
The first time I stepped into the auditorium, it was just like a breath of fresh air. Like, my life has been here for almost 5 years now, so having that ripped away from me for so long was very disheartening. So being able to come back, finally join with my friends, socially distanced with masks on, but being able to be back, being in my moment here was everything I could ask for.
For me, it felt like, for me not being in the auditorium for a long time, after being in the auditorium a lot, it felt like I came back and it felt nostalgic to me for some odd reason. It's just like being in the theater presence, it just hit you different more than, oh, I just came back to this place I don't like. You know, it's like a place you loved and you love to come back to it every time because you get that same feeling.
It was weird because you got to see like the sets that we were working on, but also like kind of like surreal. Like, I can't believe we didn't do this show. Like, it felt like it should have already been over. Like, we should have already done it, but no, we never got the chance.
It felt two ways for me. It felt kind of weird because we came in, we were like shielded and we had masks on, and it was like very hazmat. But also it felt really, really great because it just felt like home. You know, it felt right again. You know, things kind of started to feel normal again once we started to come back into the theater and starting to actually see people, even if it was from a distance. I loved it. Mask, shield, hazmat suit, I don't care. I loved every minute of it just because it just felt right, because the months prior just felt so out of the ordinary and so just weird. So it felt right to just come back and be with people and make music again. It just felt amazing.
Every other person since I left from their home, I simply
Producing a musical post-COVID, or at least in the middle of COVID, has offered a whole bunch of other challenges. The biggest is keeping everybody safe and healthy, and the temperature checks, the wearing of masks and shields to be able to help protect them. In our orchestra pit, hanging plastic and creating little plastic cubicles for the different instruments so that everybody's more safe. Fashioning different kinds of shields and guards on the, I guess, bell barriers or whatever you would call them for the instruments, for the people that are playing. And that's just in the orchestra pit. Dressing rooms. Usually you'd have, all the female principal leads in this one and all the male principal leads in this one, and then chorus splitting in the other two dressing rooms. And unfortunately, with COVID, those regulations really kicked in, and we had to adjust some of our costuming, create new spaces because we couldn't have 4 girls dressing in one room. So they, 2 of them each had a corner, and they had to be in there at different times, and there was plastic in between them, and a lot of arrangements to be made, again, to just keep everybody safe. When the parents allowed their students to come in to be part of our production, it was a gentleman's agreement that we were all going to follow the rules and make sure that everybody stays safe. That included their life outside of the theater, and making sure that they were being responsible and wearing their masks when they were supposed to, and socially distancing as appropriate to make sure that they stayed healthy and that they're not bringing anything to the other performers that are within our group.
After that, you come back in and you've been gone for 5 months, and it was just kind of like walking back into it for the very first time. Everything was exactly how we left it. It was almost surreal, but it was just a magical experience once the cast started singing and everything. I went down into the pit and I started playing, and they were all distanced from each other, and it was just, it made everything okay again. Everything was at that point to where we're gonna get through this, we're gonna move past this, and it was another experience that I will remember for a very, very long time.
We lost a great deal of our chorus. There were several people whose parents told them that they were not comfortable with them no matter what arrangements we did for safety. So we had to do some reconfiguring of stage crewish type positions that some of the chorus took care of. The Mushnick's shop was open for one scene and it had to close, and the characters who were on stage with the chorus closed the shop and melted away into the darkness as the scene dimmed and moved on to the next segment of the show. And now we didn't have that person, so we had to rearrange who was doing what stage crew jobs, which also affected costuming because they had to figure out another way of changing and or adapting their costume to look different, and it offered a whole bunch of different challenges to putting the show back together again.
Because, we thought school was over. We thought play was gone, so everybody got jobs. Everybody thought they was working people and working women and men, and we all like, Jerry's working at Red Lobster.
There are a lot of factors that go into doing a show during a pandemic. One, it's a musical, and we're used to being able to sing with no mask on and, being able to fully project our voice. But we had to be very mindful about our spacing when we were singing, because we were often told that singing was even more dangerous than speaking closer to someone. So oftentimes we were even further from, our scene partners when we were singing, just because we didn't want to get anyone sick or anything like that. And also we all had different things going on because we had been off for so many months, and we all kind of just went off and did other things and tried to fill our lives with something other than theater since we didn't have it. So it was kind of hard because we were trying to all rally everyone so we can get this thing together, and also it was kind of hard like making sure no one was like sick, and just trying to play it safe and like keep a social distance, but also put on a good show. So it was kind of hard, but we did it. It was kind of cute.
What I would say is the hardest part would be the social distancing on certain parts. So if there was a dance or a choreography that required two people to be like close together, something like we was like kind of skeptical about it, but we had to make sure everybody was in great health in order to make sure these moves are going to be okay. And we make sure we maintained that and everybody was at good health, so we made a great show in process.
The hardest part for the show, at least for me, was being stage manager. You have to make sure everyone's props is theirs. No one's allowed to touch anything. If they have it, it's theirs. So I was always having to yell at cast members saying, you can't mess with that, or hey, this is theirs, don't touch it. And I have to disinfect everything. So trying to keep everything very socially distanced. And
the hardest part was maintaining a job. That was the hardest part, a job and transportation. Because when everything in March, when COVID hit, nobody really had jobs. Everybody was mostly free most of the time. And then over the course of the summer, we pretty much all got jobs. So coming back to do the show, like we got to plan out the timing, and it was really hard to do. So that was really the hardest part.
No security. Like never sure if we're gonna actually be able to put it on or when. If someone's gonna get sick, if it'll get canceled. Just kind of like a guessing game. You just have to wait it out.
The hardest part of doing a musical during the pandemic, as a teacher, as a mom, and a mom to many of these kids, is just to make sure that I'm keeping everybody safe. Doing the research all summer long and listening to the scientists and what they're saying about the pandemic and the best way to keep people safe, and applying that to everything that we do. My husband and I do a summer theater. His father started it in 1964. But this summer, obviously, summer 2020, we were dark because the pandemic was still going on. But we did have an opportunity to do a small theater camp with some students. Most of the work was done almost by appointment, where one family would come in, they would rehearse their work, and then they would leave. We'd clean the place, air purifiers, everybody's masked, hand sanitizing everywhere, and then the next group would come in and we'd have the next rehearsal, which incredibly long days, but we did a lot of experimenting with, or putting to use is a better way of saying it, some of the research that we had found between the air purifiers and the masks. My husband built 3-sided plastic shields to be able to have the singers stand behind with a air purifier at their feet. So when they were getting their voice lessons or working on their repertoire, they were safe and the accompanist was safe and everybody else in the room was away and safe. And the room was getting cleaned in between the groups coming in. The biggest thing, like I said, is making sure that everybody stayed safe. You don't want to reboot the show. The trick was to convince administration and to convince the Lake County Board of Health that it was safe. So now the next problem was to write up our plan and have a safe audience, because we had everything else figured out for, like I said, the orchestra pit to keep them safe, the kids backstage, wiping down props in between scenes, hand sanitizer in parts of the set to be able to make sure the kids could sanitize whenever they had to, even change some of the lines a little bit to be able to make a joke about a pandemic going on here on Skid Row. So for the kids that did wear shields or masks for certain scenes, that it kind of fit into the theme of the show and the audience understanding that this was the COVID edition of Little Shop of Horrors.
You know, another time to do the show was kind of like a do-over. We got to fix a lot of things that weren't very good. Okay, I'll tell you, in the show, I have an accent, okay? And when I tell you this accent was so bad, okay? We have watched it, and then after we found out that we couldn't have the show, I kind of had a sense of relief, like, okay, I can kind of start to perfect this more so that way I don't embarrass myself when we actually perform. So that was somewhat of an upside to it, but then again, when we finally got back here, all of our voices were like shot because we hadn't sang in so long, and so we all got in here and we were thinking, oh, it's time to go, when we start warming up, and it wasn't it, but in the end we pulled.
See you climbing up my family tree. I used to think you lost the stench, but now I see that you're a man, so I'm proposing be my son. Moshnik and son, sounds great. 3 words with the ring of fate. So sail and cooperate with me. A flawless dream.
The biggest difference will be cast. The cast was already small, but after COVID hit, it got even smaller. Everybody who was in the show that were still at school, they left, went to college, or they just couldn't do it because of health reasons. So the entire cast was even smaller, and we had to fill in some parts with different people. That's how I ended up playing 4 characters. So that was probably the biggest difference, and just the environment of having to come back and rehearse with mask on, it's just not the same.
Yeah, I just feel like that was the difference. Like I don't think we were as prepared. Like it didn't feel like I don't know, like the last year was like the first time, like I think it didn't feel like a real show, because it didn't feel like a real show was happening. Like March 12th, it didn't feel like we was finna put on the show. Like I'm still thinking, it's a dress rehearsal, people just gonna come. But it was the first time that it didn't feel like one. And then I feel like October, like even though we've had sporadic practices here and there, like I felt like it was better prepared. Like, I mean, look, I'll tell you this, the first show, the orchestra got their stuff, they had it together. The first show, they still had it together. The next time, they had it together still. They had it together the whole time. Period. Y'all really did y'all stuff. Shout out to the orchestra bit. But
fun fact, I really, really, really liked the post-COVID show. I felt like we were way more prepared. Not that we weren't prepared before. I just feel like some of the spots that we kind of were just like, it'll be fine, it'll come together. We kind of got more time to really, really work those things, especially because toward the beginning we were doing kind of shorter rehearsals. So we really worked vocals and really made sure that those harmonies were there, especially with the 3 girls, and making sure that me and Jalea were good on our scenes. I feel like the post-COVID show was the best show, but I also really liked the pre-COVID show. I love Little Shop, so don't ask me.
Opening night had finally arrived, and even with all the changes that had to be made, the show went off without a hitch. While the audience wasn't big, it was loud and exciting. They had done it. Little Shop was going to get its long overdue run. Or was it?
So we get through the first night of the show, everything runs smoothly pretty much, and after the show, like immediately after the show, I felt crazy sick to my stomach. My head was throbbing, and I'm thinking, okay, maybe it was the lights. I was running around a lot. But I couldn't eat. I went home and I knocked out. I had a fever, and it was pretty bad. It was scary. We were supposed to have a show the next day, and no, that didn't happen because, of course we had a corona scare, so I had to go to the hospital, get tested and everything. and it was rough.
Okay, well, next weekend might not happen. Like, and it was, I was so tired because I don't sleep at school. So I was so tired, and I wake up and I start getting texts like, oh, I forgot, but I was just like, oh, wow, I get to go back to sleep, and then I might not come back next weekend.
Well, after he got sick, I was just like pondering. I was like, what's gonna happen? Is that our one and done? Or are we gonna find somebody else to replace him? Or is he gonna be fine? So I didn't know what was gonna happen. It was kind of like the same feeling, but way worse, because it's like everything stopped at that moment, and I didn't know what to think.
When we had a cast member get sick, I was very scared, especially for it being a lead role. I was like, we don't have anyone. We don't have someone to back them up. If this person does this, then we don't have this role. And everything got very scary there for a second. But the fact that we had other people that were willing to step up and take that role showed how much that we show professionalism in our shows, and that anyone can do anything in like a click of a second.
I was kind of nervous. I was like, man, we just did one show. Oh, I want to do at least a couple more. I didn't want to do no one and done. I was trying to get a couple in. I mean, I got some more vocal runs in me.
To cancel our very second show. This is the second show. Okay, we only got to do it one time. I fully thought that the entire run was over. I went in the kitchen on that Sunday morning to tell my mom, like, at least we got to do it one time in front of an audience. And you know, I was like throwing the towel in, like, we've done it. We've done it in front of the audience at least once. People got to see what we've been working on for all of these months. And part of me was very appreciative because we actually got to do it in front of an audience because we hadn't before. But also, I was kind of sad because it was like we worked and waited all of these months and tried to overcome all of these obstacles, even doing rehearsals over Zoom at times and using other apps to like try to sync our voices up. And we had done all of these things and waited all these months and overcame all these obstacles to do it one night in front of an audience. And a part of me was crushed, but at the same time it's like, at least we got to do it because a lot of people aren't even doing anything. So I felt weird. Again, everything is weird, okay?
That whole run was canceled. I was going to fight someone because I didn't work day and night. I didn't work day and night. Got me working day and night. But I didn't work day and night for my show to be canceled. But no, I actually did not think the show was going to be canceled. I thought we was going to find a replacement and the show was going to go on as it should. That's the motto of show business. The show must go on. Especially the amount of work and people compromise that everybody put in, where people were calling off work and saying, I can't work for this long anymore, and people quitting jobs and people just not going to work and changing their hours. And people coming down from Indy back to Indy, down from Indy back to Indy. I feel like we couldn't have canceled the show. I didn't think it was going to get canceled. I feel like everybody put too much work to make this show happen for us to be like, it's canceled.
No pain could be deeper.
So Melinda had to find an understudy fast. So she guilted her son Jacob into learning the part of Mr. Mushnick in 2 days. After all, Jacob is no stranger to the stage. He performed all through high school and through all 4 years of college. He played Phantom in Phantom of the Opera and Frollo in The Hunchback of Notre Dame. So Melinda rehearsed with Jacob and the rest of the cast for those 2 days and then called a dress rehearsal 5 hours before the Saturday night performance. There was just one more twist.
Be the plant was number one. Operate the giant plant that was built for 2 weekends but sat for over 6 months and just kind of weakened by the day. And then about a week before the second weekend, had to learn the whole entire part of Mushnick. I didn't really take it seriously because the kid was fine and his COVID test came back negative and it looked like he was good to go. And then like 2 days before, he said, I can't do it.
During the course of the week, some other challenges came up, and some other people, you can't keep people in a bubble. So as they're going about their lives, we would find out that somebody was in contact with somebody else that possibly that was testing positive. So it was sort of like, okay, well then you can't come back in the building, and you can't come and work with the kids, unfortunately. And that happened. And the pit was different the second weekend. We had to have another person cover some of the parts on a keyboard because we had people in the pit that couldn't join us for the second weekend.
And I picked up both of their parts. I picked up both of their parts. And it was really interesting because we just got here and they were like, yeah, well, this isn't happening. And I said, okay, all right, how do I figure this out? And trying to, I had 2 music stands in front of me. I had the picture, I have a picture actually from the top of the rig that I was playing. So I had a keyboard here, and a keyboard here, and one of them was transposed because the instruments that were missing were instruments that play in different keys. And then trying to figure out, my mind was constantly what's most important, because I obviously did not have enough hands to play everything. What was most important at that moment in time? Then I prayed every night that we would always have our lead keyboard player, because if we didn't have her, then I don't know what we were gonna do.
I learned the part of Mushnik in 2 days while doing everything else I was doing. And only to have an hour before the show, the kid come and say, oh, I can do it. My mom says okay. And ended up being the plant.
Well, you were always the plant.
Well, I operated the plant. I didn't play the plant.
God bless that man for learning it. God bless him.
Understudy, no understudy, it didn't matter. Those kids got to perform a show they worked on since January of 2020. And no matter what was thrown at them, they kept going, and they were not going to be denied. Even the concession stand was open and serving a full menu, socially distanced, of course. The closing weekend got all performances in. The cast was amazing, and the crowds were a little bigger every performance. And they were very enthusiastic and appreciative of the students' efforts, giving them a standing ovation every night. The audiences were never very big, but hey, there's a pandemic going on. COVID put up a fight, but the cast of Little Shop and Audrey too won this battle against all odds.
I just want to do a shout out to Music Theater International. That is the company that rents the materials for Little Shop of Horrors. When we got that initial call that we had to postpone our show, they were so wonderful. And you know, usually you have to send all the materials back by a certain date and everything, and they totally put a pause on everything on our contract. And when we thought we were doing it in April of 2020, after those 3 weeks of being out, they very graciously rewrote our contract and allowed us to go ahead and plan for the altered dates. And then as that didn't happen and we pushed and pushed, they just kind of put an open-ended note on our contract to allow us to, whenever we got a chance to be able to put it together, to finally go ahead and let the kids perform. So shout out to MTI, thank you so much, our rep Sharon, and the work that they did to make sure that, you know, theater can still happen when it was safe for everyone to be able to come back. So thanks to MTI, and we appreciate their flexibility and their grace and allowing our kids to perform.